Hello, hello, and welcome to the Collective Reset, where we discuss our passions, our self-care, our lives, and just how we are looking to live and to feel after we have all come out of this, what we're calling the reset here. So please tell us your name and where you are in the world.
I am so grateful to be here. My name is Annie Sanchez, and I am in Albuquerque, New Mexico.
Annie, how do we know each other? Where did we meet? And
We,
yeah, what's our relationship?
we met while slinging chips and guacamole 15 years ago in Tribeca at a restaurant that no longer exists.
Huh.
Um, yeah,
Back in the old days, it was like a group of us, and
mhm.
we all waitressed at this like really great place.
It was great.
And I mean, it was a lot of fun. And
Mhm.
I feel like that place was like my when I think of like Sex in the City, like young 20s, like conquering Manhattan, we at least all thought we were.
We thought
And
we
we thought
were
we were.
in our own
But we
ways.
were.
We were, and together. It
It
was
was fun.
stumbling through it together. It was fun. It's
It
like a
was.
very special little portion of my life that I like, oh, hold a super special place for.
I really do. Those were good times. So Annie hails from those days of my life. And so I want to talk to you about your work first, because I think what you're doing is really incredible. So it seems as though you have a passion for working with people of color and with women. So if you could tell us like about your business and then what led you to that work, because the last time we've come together, we were both waitresses.
Yes.
So what brought you to this work?
Oh my gosh, it's been a journey. It wasn't like an aha realization. It was sort of like stumbling through the dark, and then the light was there. I'm like, oh, okay. So let's see. So since the last I was around you, it's like restaurant, traveling, restaurant, school, restaurant. Like restaurant was always the thing, like my fallback, and always the thing that I turned to.
Hold on one second. Is there a fan in your background?
Mm-mm.
No, there's just a sound. I want to make sure we're not. I wonder if it's like the headphones, which means it's not coming up on here, which would be fine. Hold on, talk.
Okay, can you? How is the audio right now? Better,
Yeah,
better.
so I don't hear it on this, which is fine. That means it's just in my headphones.
Okay.
Are we
Okay.
back? Okay, good.
Okay. Um, let's see. So, what, 15 years ago, always working in restaurants, always returning to restaurants, um, but always also trying to figure out what the fuck I was going to do with my life. I never totally knew.
Hmm.
And there was a time when I thought I would go to sommelier school and really wanted to immerse myself in the wine world. And I always had this humming idea that I would open a wine bar. And I think if I had stayed in Brooklyn, that's what I would have done. But I came back to New Mexico, where I'm from, in 2012. And at the time, I was coming because my sister's kids, who had been born in New York, and I was help co-parenting in the beginning, they were back here, and I felt like I was missing out on their little beginnings of their lives. But it just happened to coincide with my mom getting sick, which, if you want, we can talk about later. So it was sort of divine timing. But I'm like, what am I doing? And I started working at a restaurant here and doing fundraising work for nonprofits, and eventually found myself working for a nonprofit. Clearly, it was wrong for me. It was right until it was wrong. And I'm like, that's it. I'm opening a wine bar. I am leaving. Bye, everybody. I said it out loud to all of my people. I was running a place for a couple of years. That was now 2 years ago. Exactly 2 years ago, actually, July of 2018. But I knew that I was like, oh, I need this change. Like in 16, 15, 16, it was bubbling. So I was going to open the wine bar. And there's a variety of reasons why that didn't happen. And I'm like, okay, what am I doing? What am I supposed to be doing? Where do I actually want to be devoting my time? To whom? What do I want my life to look like? Oh, I don't actually want a brick and mortar business. I don't want to have to go somewhere every single day. Wait a minute. I want to just be around the people that make me feel like I'm not even working. I just want it to be fun, and I want it to be deep, and I can only go deep. I don't want to talk about superficial shit, which is actually what happens in restaurants and bars and that like chit chat. Like that's not what I want. And so it started to emerge. My business, which is called Mariposa Strategies, you started to emerge in the fall-ish, fall winter of 18, so almost 2 years ago. And it really started to take shape pretty quickly without a lot of effort, I have to say. And I think that it really is because I was leaning completely into what felt right and not trying to force anything.
Mm. I love what you said because I think what's important about like what's happening in the world right now is I feel like for many of us, for better or worse, are being forced to sit down, right? And to decide what we want life to look like. And I think the biggest thing there is like we get to decide what we want life to look like because in essence, everything's been kind of clean slated, right? And I like what you said about you thought about what you wanted to feel like and what was going to bring you joy and what was going to make it feel like you weren't even working.
Right.
Um, and so I think it's important for people who are sitting there now trying to decide, like, where am I going and what am I doing? That those are the types of questions that you're asking. So when you were starting and when you were beginning, like, if you were talking to somebody, which I think is a lot of what you do in your work, if you were talking to someone who's looking for clarity and who's looking for which way do I go now? What are your tips or action steps that you feel like people should start to bring themselves into that space?
I it seems like when I'm talking to people who don't get it, they're like, yeah, but okay, sure, but. And so the truth, really, this is how I live my life now. It's how my partner and I have designed our lives, and it's how I work with clients. Like, really, really, really tapping into like deep, deep intuition. Like, what feels good? No, you don't have to do anything that feels hard. It
Mhm.
sounds crazy and it's like, oh, please, like life still has to happen. Yeah, like there are still regular life still has to happen. Somebody's got to go to the grocery store, somebody's got to, whatever, the normal shit. But I think when we're thinking about how we can show up in the world, how we can serve the world, how we can earn a living, how we spend our time, like we can radically claim pleasure, radically claim joy. Like giving me goosebumps even to think about because I'm like this for all intents and purposes I am living my best life right now.
Hmm.
I'm always thinking ahead and it's important that I bring myself back to the present, but I'm like I don't even feel like I work. It's weird to say I'm going to work now. Bye. It's like that's not work. Like it doesn't even feel like work. And I think it should be are the questions should be asking are what isn't feeling good and why. Why do we keep doing the things that don't feel good? Why do we
Hmm.
keep tolerating bad working relationships, work that doesn't fulfill us, work that doesn't pay us well, back pain that we might be suffering with for months or years? It's like, you don't have to hurt. You don't have to make shitty money. You don't have to work with people that don't get you or appreciate you or love you. Like, what doesn't feel good? And why are you tolerating it? And then on the flip, like, what do you want your life to feel like? Really, truly, what do you want your life to feel like? What do you want your day when you wake up in the morning? What do you want it to be like? And allow that to guide.
I think that's such a important thing to say. One, that why do we keep saying yes to things that make us feel like shit, right? And what is this this pervasive feeling in our society that we feel like we always have to be struggling, and there must be struggle, there must be this like hard hand that comes with everything, and it's like you really don't. You are inventing this idea that things have to be hard, and it's not to say that by choosing to follow your dreams, exactly like you said, that you still don't have, life still happens, right? Except that it's happening around this beautiful thing that you've designed, instead of it happening and it's happening around the thing you already don't like, right? It's like at least the life you've designed can be beautiful and peaceful in your safe space, and let the rest of it happen and ebb and flow. But
Yeah.
to
Yeah.
continue to design your life. So for you, what was it about working with people of color and then women that felt like, okay, this is who I want to focus on?
Yeah, it's so interesting. The journey to get really, really clear about who I want to work with has been challenging. So I think you and I share this, in that we are magnets for white women.
Yes.
I was telling a native
That's so
man, like
funny.
indigenous man, this the husband of a friend of mine. I was telling him how he was like, "Oh, you are too." Like all the
Yeah,
white.
there's like,
I'm like, I think it's because, like, literally, I have always been the only person of color in my friend groups. And it never dawned on me growing up, like, I don't, it never occurred to me until it became so obvious. And I thought, this is interesting. What is this about? And I recognize that it's like I can bridge both worlds of POC and whiteness, where I grew up in a community where it was very, very brown, but like a brown supremacy kind of
mhm.
community. And then the whiteness was very, very white and very rich and very privileged. And so like I learned how to navigate it, and I think that makes white people comfortable around me.
Yes.
They know how to be around me. They feel safe around me. I know how to hold space for them. Um, and as I was building out my business, I was like, okay, all these white women in my life, both either directly in my life or on the periphery, who are now seeing what I'm doing, want to be a part of it, want to be a client, want to be involved, whatever, collaborate. Like, there's something inside me is telling me, not that I don't want to work with white people, but that I really want to nurture
Mhm.
communities of color. I want to nurture that side of myself. I want to nurture that side of my family that's been neglected. I want to nurture that in my community, because there are so, I mean, honestly, I've only been doing this work for 2 years. And even 2 years ago, I was one of very few women of color doing coaching consulting work like I do. And so I had been trying to find a BIPOC coach, well, when I was running the nonprofit years ago, it was almost impossible to find. People who identify as coaches are almost always predominantly white women, and most of them identify as life coaches. And I'm like, that's not quite the right fit. And so it was like, I'm going to cultivate this side of my skill and my intuition and like build it into an offering. And so really spent a lot of time on the front end, really cultivating that side of my education so that I could be the person I was looking for a couple of years before. And now I've like been messily stumbling through women, white women, people of color, men of color, who am I working with? And it's been clearer and clearer that it is communities of color that feed me the most.
Mhm.
Um, and interestingly, I love working with women of color. Like I run these cohorts. I'm like, I do it like selfishly for me, like really, really, and we could talk about that more in a minute. But I also really love working with men of color. Our
Mm.
individual one-to-one coaching relationship, there is a level of vulnerability that men of color typically don't get to have. And it's like, oof, it is a super special, very sacred place to be. It's not lost on me how special these men are entrusting their hearts and minds and messy ideas with. Like it's such an important role to hold. So I'm loving working with men of color, and I'm wanting to cultivate that more. But I've got all these women of color because everyone's like, ooh, somebody's finally doing the thing. And so I've got this amazing network of women of color, Indigenous women especially. There's a really, really large community of Indigenous Native women in New Mexico, and then just the network around the country through that affiliation. I'm not Native, but they have been an amazing sisterhood for me. And so
That's
it's that.
incredible. I think that something that you said resonated with me is, and it's what I wish that people paid more attention to when, because we've all heard like follow your dreams, follow your passions, right? And it's like, okay, well, what does that mean? And what I think is important to get clear on is if you do or begin to work in what you yourself needed, right? Just do what you're looking for. Like you were looking for something and now you are creating the content that serves that community, right? Because you needed you. I think like for a lot of us that work in our passions, they came from needing help and support and then saying, I can't find it. So fuck it. I'm going to create it. And then yeah, it never feels like work. Like it's a lot. It's a lot to do, right? To be a business owner, to be an entrepreneur, to get clear on yourself and where you're going, and to stay focused and all the things that come with starting your own business. But it won't feel like work if you feel like you're serving the same need that you had.
Hmm.
Right.
There's something I think that a lot of people struggle with, though, in it's the imposter syndrome thing. Like if I need this thing, who am I to create it when I don't know how to do it? It's like you know something. You know
Yeah.
something about you're having the lived experience.
Which is,
And
that's the huge part. You having lived it is what makes you the expert. There
right,
is nothing else that you need. I mean, you need, there are skills to learn, but
sure.
you are so much more of an expert than somebody who just went to school for it or learned it. It's like, and the client wants you more than they want the person who has studied this. It doesn't matter how many degrees you have. I would rather go the person who can say, oh, I've lived through that and came through it on the other side.
Yes, which makes me think about a conversation I had in one of my cohorts recently around what one of the women was going to go. She's starting a doula, birth doula, death doula practice. She's been cultivating it for a long time through the indigenous lens. And she has this like a constant hum that she needs to get certified in certain components of that practice, which I know you're also certified in, or I don't even know if you're
Yeah,
certified.
but
You are in.
I tell people all the time, if you can be compassionate and you are a woman and you can be good to people, you can be a doula. Like,
And it's colonial white supremacy fucking bullshit that makes us, especially as women of color, as people of color, think that we need to get certified in whatever the thing is to be taken seriously, to be
seriously.
legitimate. And it's like, you're gonna say that an indigenous woman who they've been birthing at home for eons has to get certified
Yeah,
to
no, she does not.
fuck that shit. And
Hmm.
the white woman coach world, like you need to be certified to trust your intuition and instinct. Like I had a number of white women coaches in my circle, like, oh, are you gonna get certified? Are you gonna get certified when I first started out? I'm like, fuck you. Like
Yeah.
I'm gonna not get certified just because you keep asking me, actually.
I do think there is something that among women of color, there is like, I must have these degrees because we know that when we step into a room, we are required to be 20 times what you are in order to be taken seriously the way you are. And so we load ourselves with degrees and certifications, and education is phenomenal. However, so many of us hold ourselves back from saying, I cannot move forward until I have this. And it's like you already have the skills. You have, it's what you said, you have to trust yourself. You have to understand like you are not an imposter in this space,
Mhm.
and you are your own best expert, and what you bring with yourself is incredible and necessary.
Mhm.
Yeah. Tell me about the cohorts. Like what is your cohort, and what happens in it?
Sure. So it started out, I launched the first one last year, last fall. It was 3 months, and I just called it, I had no name for it. So I'm like, it's the Women of Color cohort. That's what it's going to be. And I'm like, that's not really a name. So I started to rethink that this year. And I knew that I wanted to do more this year, but I wasn't really sure. But it initially started out as like really focused on like goal setting, intentional, meaningful, deep, personal goal setting, and like the cohort supporting each other with working through them over the course of 3 months. Now, pandemic cohort emerged. It was like all the old rules don't apply. Like it doesn't like I'm just going to try shit and see what feels right. I knew that I wanted to do more this year. I was getting requests for another one, but I wanted it to look different. And so right now I launched the second one in April. So we've done April, May, and June, and they're individual 1 month cohorts. And it is the Women of Color Culture Club is what it is. And then there's cohorts within the Culture Club. And so what we do is we meet for 5 weeks, actually, so a little over a month. And I have a framework that I go through that is, it's like deep, meaningful, deeply personal visioning work. And so it's like really rooted in our belief systems, like and challenging our beliefs about people at their worst, especially people at their best. Like what do I actually believe about people? Because if I'm going to go do the damn thing, whatever my thing is, I need to be really, really, really clear about what I believe about other people, because the shit is gonna be flung at you all the time. And so we go through a belief, like one of the weeks is focused on belief systems. Then we do visioning work. Like, what is your vision for the world you want to not just leave behind, but live in now? What do you want people to tell stories around the kitchen table about you 100 years from now? What's the legacy that you want to leave behind, which is tricky for people who don't have children. I don't have children myself, and there's been a number of women who are like, I don't really care about the legacy I leave, like I want to do it now, I want to live the thing now. I'm like, what is the world that you want to live in now? So we go through that, we talk about how they're going to do it. All right, great, now we got to figure out how the fuck to do it.
Mm-hmm.
How? What car do you choose? Like it
Mm-hmm.
could be doula work, it could be coaching work, it could be running a nonprofit, it could be starting a fucking product business. Who knows what it is? But like only you can know, and it needs to be directly connected to your why. Why does it matter? Why do you choose to do the work that you do? Not just because of the salary or because of the location. That's how we get caught up in like the corporate like bullshit where you're just trying to achieve title salary, but it doesn't really matter to you. And so all of it is connected to really identifying what you really want to be doing in this lifetime, because we all die.
Yeah, all of us.
Yeah, and
None
so
of us get away with it.
none of us get away with it. So, what do you want? Why do you want to do what you do? How are you going to do it? And then, one of my favorites components of the framework is what I call core intentions, that are they're modeled after Adrienne Marie Brown's emergent strategy. She talks about strategic intentions in advocacy work and community organizing in the context of the cohort. And it's the core intentions are really what help me in very real, very practical, day-to-day ways know what to say yes and no to.
That is so important.
Because you're like, great, I want to whatever the thing is, but then somebody's like, hey, Iana, do you want to like partner on this thing? And you're like, well, we could probably make money together, but like, is it linked? Does it, are you being distracted by a shiny object, right?
Mm.
Core intentions really, really help to keep you on track on so you and it's so much easier to say yes and no to things. I've had to say no to a number of difficult things since I've had my core intentions in place, but I'm like, but I don't feel bad about it. It's like a no-brainer. Like I don't even have to weigh the options. It's
But
like,
I think it's so important to know what those are, right? Because so many people don't. And so what you said happens a lot, right? You start saying yes to things and you start just thinking about this could make me money, this could make me money. And it's like you have all these side hustles going. And it's like
exposure.
exposure, yeah, like this will get, if I leverage this to leverage this. And it's like, but does that feel good? Like, are you just chasing, like you said, the shiny object? It's
Right.
like, but if you know what your intentions are, I love that. Then you know when you say no, it also doesn't make you sit there and did I do the right thing? Should have I said yes? If you can look at your intentions, then you're like, does not match up. So I'm good.
Right. And your core intentions are meant to keep you on track to like create the world that you want to live in, the world that you want to leave behind, that you want people to tell stories about. So it's like it's all linked together in a really personal way. A number of the women have said, like, I saw the framework, I was excited to be a part of it, I've heard great things, but fuck, this is like hard work. Like, this is hard heart work. And it's like, yeah, you don't get the answer 5 weeks later, but you have a lot more clarity than you did walking in. And literally in the last year since it's been going on, there have been at least 5 women that I can think of immediately off the top of my head who have quit their jobs and or started businesses and or left relationships and or moved
Love
from
that.
new cities. And I'm like, yes,
Yes.
we all die. Like,
Yes.
go do what feels right.
And if there's any time I feel like it's why, this podcast began, because it's like if there's ever been a realization about how short life can be, about how fleeting some of these things that we attach ourselves to are, and that at the end of the day, when you are sitting in your house, which we all are, on your couch, what are you feeling good about, right? And I feel like I hope that people are using this time to say, you know what, like 1 through 10 did not feel good in my previous life, and I don't want to recreate that when we're all able to move back into whatever the new normal will be. And I hope it's not the new normal. I hope it's something completely different
Yes.
than what we had.
That is what we talk about a lot. I'm like, the tagline has been because fuck the old normal.
Yeah.
Like, really, we don't even know what we're it drives me nuts that people are craving the old normal. They want to go back to normal. When we go back to normal, oh, thank God, we're finally back to normal. Some people are posting. I'm like, what are you? In what world are you living in? We are so far from what it was, and why on earth would we want to go back there?
I don't know.
It
I'm
doesn't make.
I'm hoping we're all creating nothing but newness, beautiful, forward moving newness. I'm wondering, because I know like when I work with my clients on the yoga side, there are usually themes that I see a lot when I work with different groups of people. And so when you work with like women and people of color, what do you find like they need most clarity around? Or do you find like these are the themes that I feel like I keep hearing from women over and over as what their blocks are maybe for deciding to pull the trigger on the new gig, starting the new job, leaving the man, moving from the city?
Oh my gosh, that's a really good question. I would say like the most prominent, the most recurring is fear of the unknown. People get excited and they feel like inspired to think bigger, to think outside the box, to realize that they can think out the box, but there's a lot of fear around how to make it happen what and like just of the unknown. And so it's fear, what if, but I don't know, but I don't know. And the truth is, we never know. Even if you have a job, a full time job with a steady paycheck, there is actually no guarantee that you're going to have it next month. And if this pandemic has illuminated anything, I believe that it's that. And it's like, nobody's secure. No matter what you think you have, you're not secure. In fact, the most secure that I think any of us can possibly be, if there's ever real, true sense of security, is in controlling our own destinies, which is scary as fuck because you don't know what the outcome is going to be.
Yeah.
But there's a tremendous amount of fear that a lot of the folks in the cohorts have expressed, and in coaching one-on-one clients as well, just a fear of wanting it to be perfect or wanting some sense of certainty in their decision, which I am. The coach that I work with, she's I call her my money coach. She's based in Brooklyn also, actually. She We talk a lot about money and my relationship with money and beliefs about money and how it serves in my personal life and in my business and how I'm creating this thing I'm doing. And she's like, you want certainty around.
Mm.
I often, because I wasn't raised to know anything about money, and not that I was like kept from it. Like nobody knew anything about money. We were all just living. And now I'm like, I don't know, like often holding my breath and like
Yeah.
forgetting to pay bills because I'm like, I don't want to look, I don't know.
Yeah.
And she's like, once you have, Jaquette is her name, what she tells me, like, once you have, you're never going to have certainty, but you can have clarity and you can have a plan. So there's so much of our fear around making leaps, changing jobs, leaving the person, doing the thing, moving to another city has to do around just the unknown. And so what can we do to like at least diminish some of the unknown? How much, and also like step into the excitement of leaping.
Yeah. And that is it. It's fear, and it's fear for everyone, right? We all, anyone who has ever started out on their own, started something new, changed gears in life, redirected, it's terrifying. And I don't know that that fear ever truly goes away, but it's almost like you have to learn to kind of lean into the fear, find excitement in the fear, and yeah, try to at least organize around the fear, right?
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
when you were starting, which I think is important for people to know, like, because one of the reasons I did want to talk to you is because this has been the last few years and you've watched it grow, and and you've started again, and it's thriving. So when you were wanting to step out on fear, or you at least wanted to start this, how did you talk yourself out of, no, I'm not going to do this?
Hmm. So
Or how do you keep yourself from talking yourself out of it?
a big thing for me is that's always been a feature of my adult life is a need for change. I'm constantly needing to change things up. Um, and so when I was going out on my own a couple of years ago, was like, this is what I'm doing. I need a change. And there is literally no fallback. There is no, I am not going to go work in a nonprofit again. I am not going to go wait tables again. Sure, I could always go work in a coffee shop if I have to, but like failure is literally not an option, Annie. It's just not. And so every time I would like get kind of stuck or hung up or unsure or panic that like, oh my God, literally going to run out of money. What am I going to do? It's like, I can't stop because then it would undo what I've been doing. It would undo the progress, which would be so sad. Like it would have been a waste, right? And at this point, like 2 years in, shit is happening. Things are really amazingly good. Like I don't want to undo that. And now I'm extra motivated, not just to not undo what I've done or the progress, but I don't want to like not do what my community is asking for.
Mm.
And there's still so much. Like I'm still like a baby entrepreneur. Like I've been at it for not even 2 years. I incorporated in November of 2018. Although these last 4 months feel like their own year. It feels like so much longer.
Mm.
But it's just like to keep going, it's the reminder that like, but you've put in this work. Even if you're just starting out, you've put in a week of work. If you stop, then what was the point of the week? If you've put in a month, then why? Like, you don't. I don't want to ever undo it. I want to
Mm.
keep. And it's like, just keep going, just keep going, just keep going. And
Yeah, but it's smart to like remind yourself, like if you stop now, then what about the week you just spent, the month you just spent? Like what a waste of time if you don't just continue and just watch what happens. And I think part of it is just trusting whatever it is that you believe in, the universe, God, Allah, whatever it is, that you are just trusting that you will be supported, and trusting that if you continue to show up for yourself and for your community and whomever you are hoping to serve, that you'll be taken care of. There has to be a belief that comes with it.
absolutely. And I mean, it's like, what's the saying? Whatever you pay attention to grows.
Rose.
Obviously, if you only do it half-ass, you're going to get a half-ass result, right? And it's extra scary when you don't really know what to do. And thinking about the cohort that I started last year and it's evolved into what it is now, I really was craving a community for myself. And originally I was like, I need to create my own mastermind. Like, in town, I'm going to put a thing up on Meetup, Women of Color Mastermind, which it was like a joke, really. Like, a bunch of white women showed up to my Women of Color mastermind. Like, a friend of mine was like, "Oh, how's your white women of color group going?" I'm like, "Shut up." It's like, of course this is how it is. Like, literally.
That's so funny.
I'm like, okay, like,
That's
I
hilarious.
I need the community. I'm craving the connection. I'm craving the people. I'm craving the relationships. And so the cohort emerged, which wasn't the thing exactly that I was creating for myself, but I'm like, I'm gonna just sort of adjacently create it for other women and also get to be a part of this community. And so it was, like I said, it was kind of a selfish thing in the
Yeah.
beginning, but I wanted community. And it's like, it's hard to make progress when you're scared. But if there's no fallback, like, you cannot imagine going to work at Trader Joe's.
Yeah.
Like, you got to keep going. Whatever you pay attention to grows.
Yeah.
And it will never not be scary. That is the truth.
Yeah. It's true.
And the idea of, like, get comfortable with being uncomfortable. Ooh, like, I finally know what that means. Like, I got it. It always is uncomfortable, but
Always uncomfortable.
it's going to be okay.
Yeah. That is like the most important lesson I think I've learned as an entrepreneur myself, is like you have to be comfortable with being uncomfortable. You have to let go of this idea of, I know what's happening 10 years from now. I know what my bank account looks like 20 years from now. You have to just keep living in the like service and just keep showing up, and that's it. Um, Something that I think is really interesting about this time is how much it reminds me of grieving my parents. Um, I think there's a huge level of grief that I don't know that everyone notices, that it's like we are all grieving jobs, right? Grieving this old life we were living, grieving whatever our sense of security was. Um, and when I think of when I lost my mom and then when I lost my dad, how much it changed me, in that you saw how short life could be, right? You saw that that the only thing you want to be doing when you're laying on your deathbed is hopefully flashing back on a life you're proud of. And I think who I was before my grief versus who I was after are completely two different people. Um, and I look at this time as like kind of the same thing. Like there are significant heavy losses going on for people, and you are being forced to be broken from who you were before. And so I'm wondering, when it came to you, if you could share with us who you lost, and then if you recognized in yourself like that there was a difference between pre-loss and post-loss, um, and just kind of how you navigated that, becoming this kind of new version of yourself.
Yeah. It's interesting to think of like Annie, old Annie versus now Annie, and pre-COVID versus post-COVID. In my house, my partner and I have talked a lot about that pre and post, and he's also experienced a lot of grief and loss. So in 2014, so I was back in New Mexico by that point. I moved back in 2012. My In April of 14, my grandfather passed away. And me and my mom and my dad, who have been divorced forever, and my sister were had a really some sweet time with him right before he was passing. And then in June, my mom died. In April, when we were spending time with my grandpa, it was like not even, we were not thinking that my mom was going to be dead 2 months later. Um, and then in December, my grandmother died, my mom's mom, who arguably my mom really served as a really prominent matriarch in our family. Um, and so I lost my grandpa on my dad's side, my mom and my grandma on my mom's side, and life has forever been different. 2014 was just like, what the
Yeah.
is going on? What the fuck is going on? And I have a sister, a niece, and two nephews, and we as sisters also experienced the grief and the loss differently, and like moved through it very differently. Um, and what I've realized in the last, especially in the last year, um, like year and a half, is that I am fundamentally different than I was now from who I was before. And the grieving, the healing has just, I'm like over here now, and my sister is over there now. Like, even our relationship is, I mean, you met her when we lived in New York, and she worked at the restaurant with us at one
Yeah.
point and went to law school. We hardly even talk, actually. It's
Mm,
really, really, it's been a painful realization that we may never get back to any version of what we were, because we're both different. Like, when you break something, your heart is broken. When it heals back up, it's like nubby
yeah.
and different, and I'm over here and you're over and it's like, so the version of us together too as sisters, if we ever find our way to something, it'll be very different than what it was, which is also hard to imagine and kind of scary. And like, what do we, like, we have to we have to build a new relationship, really. Um, so I feel very, very different than before. There was a level of invincibility before. Um, I hadn't really lost people
Yeah.
prior. I had lost one uncle and one grandmother and a friend in high school. And now it's like I'm just acutely aware of mortality, and I do believe that I have the female genes on my dad's side. Like, all the women on that side live to be like 100. My grandmother is 94. She will easily live another 5 or 6 years at least, which is an amazing thing. I think I will live very long, but I'm very aware that I couldn't. Like, my mom died when she was 55, and
Mm,
I'm like, what if that was when it started to shift for me. So she died when I was 33, and it was like a year of just bumbling through, and I had the realization, like, I could die when I'm 55. I mean, I could die anytime, but I could die when I'm 55. I'm 34. Like, that is, I better fucking hurry up. I got shit to do.
yeah.
I got shit to do. Like, I don't have time to waste anymore. And I think that was a big part of like my sister and our grieving processes also were so different, that I was like, I got shit to do. I'm on it. Like, I remember my mom used to always tell me, Annie, like, I don't know what you're gonna do, but it's going to be something big. Like I cannot wait to see what like the thing is going to be. I'm like, is it the wine bar? Is it the this? Is
Yeah.
it the that? And I'm like, oh shit, that's funny. Like it's just how it's all shaken out. And my sister is in a very similar place to where she was professionally, and her life looks very similar. And she's got kids. It's different, but I'm like, I've wondered if she feels the difference, the pre and the post, if she
Mm,
recognizes it. Because even though her life looks on the surface to be the same ish, she must feel different.
yeah.
We are different now. We are child like motherless daughters. We are whew, it's just different. And the grieving of COVID, I noticed when I did the very first cohort or the second cohort, which was in April, which was the first one of this year, I was feeling inspired to create a space for people based on the collective trauma that we are continuing to experience, but it was like just high vibration, really heightened March, April. And I think we all just cried through all of it. Like all of us just crying and not knowing why. I'm like,
Yeah.
this is grief. We are grieving and we don't even know what we're grieving,
Yeah.
really. Like but it's something major. We're collectively losing something,
Yes.
whether we acknowledge it or not.
And
And I
that's
think
what it is.
people
It's
cry are angry, right? That's when the
yes.
anger comes. They're resisting the loss.
That is, and it's the same thing. Like that grief, that collective grief. It's like it's so true. It's like it's manifesting the same way that there are people that are going to look at this as this is the fire under my ass that pushes me into life is too short, nothing is secure. I'm going to do what brings me joy and what's helping people. And then, yeah, I do think there's a group that is making them angry that they are being forced to reset, forced to sit with their shadows, forced to sit with themselves. Um, and so that manifests itself. And that way, the same as when you're grieving and you don't really want to deal with the loss and you don't want to deal with healing because you're not ready to, or you just don't want to. And there's an angry group that comes out of them too.
Mm-hmm.
Um,
Oh yeah.
so, what advice do you feel like you have for people who are sitting there like, okay, I'm feeling this need to move into the post, right? This is going to be my dividing line. Um, I know, like for myself, if I relate it to my own grief, it was get up every single day and make it through this day. And what is the best I can do through this day? Um, and sometimes it started with just this hour. I'm just going to get to 12 o'clock in the afternoon. um, and then, that hour became that afternoon, that became that day, that became get through this week. Um, and that was for me, I could not look too far out
Mm-hmm.
um, until I could, right? Until I could get to a place where, okay, now I can expect that there is longevity and that I can expect that I will be okay enough a month from now to handle whatever I'm setting up now.
Mm-hmm.
Um, so I'm just wondering, what do you feel like you tell people that are like, I need there to be a post.
I mean, you're hitting it right on the head, in the least harmful of ways. That's like harmful language. What I was experiencing in the loss of in 14 and 15 and just trying to find my way through was very, very similar in March and well, more April and May. I remember telling my partner, I was like, I literally can't do more than one thing a day. I'm just going to do one thing a day. One, whatever that thing is. Maybe I'll shower.
Yeah.
Maybe I'll go for a walk. Maybe I'll read a book. Okay, maybe today will be the day that I respond to some emails. And I think there's so much emphasis, not I think, I know that there's so much emphasis on doing, productive, be productive, do more. Oh my God, it's pandemic. You could like be your best self, write a book,
Yeah.
get into the best shape of your life. And it's like, fuck, how about we just stop? It is okay to just stop. It is okay to do one thing a day or one thing a week or one thing all fucking month. Like, I'm just gonna focus on my garden and that's all I can do for the month.
Hmm.
All I can do right now. Like, that is, we don't give ourselves enough permission to be human in the the machine that is
Yeah.
American culture, worldwide like trauma. Like we're human beings in it. We are sad and we are scared and we have families that we hope don't get the fucking virus and kids that we're trying to homeschool while working full-time jobs if we're even allowed to work from home. It's like there's so much happening, and I think that the like if to do something different, to live a life that's different, just pick one thing and focus on that, because whatever you pay attention to grows. Like, I'm just
Yes.
gonna focus on this right now. And every single time that like little annoying voice is like, but you're not doing enough, you should be, you should, so much should.
Yeah.
Like, how about replacing should with could? Like,
Yeah.
could I could go for a run. I could go to the grocery store. I could also just have Ruffles potato chips and wine for dinner tonight, and that's okay too. Like, there's no shoulds. You could do anything, and what feels good and right to you now. Like,
Yeah.
just do what feels good when you're trying to stumble out of the hole. Like,
Yeah.
just can't, like, I'm gonna get out of this hole and I'm gonna like start my business and make $1 million. I hope so. I
Mhm.
fucking hope so. I want everybody to start their own businesses and make millions of dollars.
Yeah.
But all you can do is put one foot in front of the other. Like, at any given moment, you can literally only do one thing.
Yep.
Like, notion of multitasking and being amazing at doing lots of things, you can only actually do one thing at a time.
Hmm.
So just do one thing at a time.
I love that. I love that. What's it like right now in Albuquerque, racial temperature wise? Like, what's it feeling like out there? It's like one of the things I love about this is this podcast, and honestly, talk about like filling a need. It really was like it's the pandemic. I want to talk to my friends, right? I want to see my people. Um, and it was, I know really dope people doing really awesome stuff. And so I want to hear what's happening. And then also, like, everyone's living in different parts of the world. So just hearing how things are showing up
Mm-hmm.
has been really interesting. So, like, how is Albuquerque responding to what's happening with our current civil rights movement?
It, generally speaking, I feel like Albuquerque is more progressive than most communities in this part of the country. Um, New Mexico is often referred to as a, it depends on, you either say minority majority state or a majority minority, that we are mostly people of color.
Mm.
Um, but within that, it's also very complicated because we have a small Black community. There's not a lot of Black folks here, but there is deep history with Black community in New Mexico. But historically, brown, like a lot of times folks in like my racial group refer to themselves as Hispanic, or we're Spanish because we have like ancestral roots to Spain. And it's like, so there's a lot of colorism. It's maybe less racism. Not, I wouldn't say that there's less racism, but there's a lot of colorism in
Yeah.
New Mexico. But also there's a progressive um, bend for sure. And so there are things that are happening, like, our governor is amazing, thankfully, and is really um, recognizing how the pandemic, how the virus is just exponentially hitting communities of color.
Yeah.
And just being aggressive about it. And of course, everybody hates them. So many people hate her for doing that. But it's like, we can't not serve our community. Like, if we were ever worried about the pandemic and the virus before, now with all the racial tension, like, it is abundant. It's all being just splattered on the table in front of us. Like, we have serious problems here, even though we think that we're more progressive than other communities. Like, we don't have it figured out. Um, there are, our mayor and is trying to do things in Albuquerque, putting in like community led, like, not community policing, but like intervention teams that are basically community members. It's not just all law enforcement, first
Mhm.
responders, like doing more progressive things like that. We have this amazing, amazing, rich indigenous culture that is like such a prominent part of our community. And Native folks have been really, 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 really discriminated against for such a long time here. Land stolen, people murdered. There's like a lot all around the country with like monuments coming down.
Yeah.
The monuments that people are asking, are like requiring come down in New Mexico, are Spanish, Spaniards, settler, colonial, Oñate, who murdered, thousands and thousands of native folks and like took over their land. So it's, instead of being so black and white in other
Mm.
parts of the country, it's like native, brown, white. It's a little, it's different, but I don't know. It's like, I feel hopeful. I'm grateful that I'm here and not in somewhere else.
Yeah.
But it also feels like it's not enough. Like, I just want things to happen faster. Like, take all the fucking statues down.
Yeah.
Why are we like? Of course, like, black community in New Mexico, in Albuquerque especially, the International District they call it. They named it because it used to be called horrible things before.
Mhm.
Like, it is where there is the least amount of investment in schools, in roads, in sidewalks, in, small business. It's like, more. We should be doing more. And I recognize that we are doing a
Yeah.
lot more than a lot of other cities of our size. Like, we're in, like, population wise, New Mexico or Albuquerque, Baltimore, Milwaukee, we are like kind of tied in population size. So it's like, okay, we're a city of around the same size as these that are considered bigger cities. Like, we're doing our part. I am proud of our mayor. I am proud of our governor. We have an office of equity and inclusion, which a lot of cities don't have. Like, that feels really powerful and is run by a woman of color. Our economic development department for the city is run by a woman of color. The like chief administrative officer who basically runs the city, she's our governor, our mayor's right hand, is a woman of color. There are efforts that are being made here that are different than I think a lot of other cities. So
I do think it's interesting to highlight, though, one, that for so many, this isn't a black and white issue, that there is this huge range of people of color who also have been oppressed and who have dealt with injustice and also need their own story to be told, right? And we need to hear what they're doing and how their communities are responding. And so it's interesting to hear how Albuquerque, what's happening there.
and to be clear, like, our native brothers and sisters are like, we can't be liberated
Yeah,
until our black brothers and sisters are liberated. Like, it's not like, oh, but we're feeling it too. Oh, you think it's not just you.
yeah,
No, fucking no. The lateral oppression has
yeah.
got to stop. Has got to stop. And so it feels that feels powerful right now here in New Mexico, especially.
I love that. One of the things that I always like to look at self-care, which that term sometimes like rattles me, but self-care, mental health care, right? Caring for the inner vessel, that we are all kind of teaching each other. I don't believe in the like this is the fit for you, right? So for me it's meditation. For me it's cooking, it's wine. These are the things that keep me kind of pulled together.
Mhm.
Um but that doesn't work for everybody. And so I like for all of the guests to come on who come on here to share, like, for you, what is your holy God, like, things are falling apart, I need to start pulling these tools from my tool belt because I know this is going to get me back. Like, what are you doing for yourself?
Such a good question. And honestly, it's funny, like, well, funny, not funny, that I have to remind myself that I have the tools in my toolbox and I
Yeah,
can pull them out of my cauldron anytime that I
yeah,
want. And I'm like, oh, right. Oh, right. No wonder I'm feeling untethered and I can't stop crying.
yeah,
So the things that I return to that I know if all else fails, if I force I'm not a morning person. I don't identify as a morning person, but I love, love, love the feel of the morning. So I make myself do it.
mm-hmm.
Um, so and actually this morning was one of the days I woke up before 7 a.m., which felt like an accomplishment because it's been
Mm-hmm.
very hard lately to wake up. I'm like, to wake up early and have like that early morning air. The neighborhood is quiet. Matt sleeps late because he wakes up, he stays up late. Like it's just quiet, and I can sit outside with my coffee. Even when it's cold, I especially like it when it's cold out and like having the cool air and having coffee and having my journal and having a very, very intentionally slow morning that
Yeah,
involves any combination of journaling, meditation, and just thinking, like really allowing my mind to just wander because it feels so often throughout the day like it's just like on to the next thing, on to the next thing. I have a phone call, I've got meetings, I've got to work on this, I got to do that. Oh my God, I got to go run to the grocery store. It's like just really giving myself unapologetic time to just be is
mm,
profoundly healing for me.
yeah,
And I forget how helpful that is until I'm like, ugh, like I don't have any space to think for
yeah,
myself. Um, I also, in since COVID has started, because we're home all the time, I've been nurturing a little garden in my front yard that is like we're also trying to buy a house right now, like be homeowners for the first time in our lives. But I'm like, we can't move until my watermelon is harvested. I can't leave the watermelon behind or the corn. I'm growing corn. And Matt's like, it'll be fine. I'm like, we're just gonna have to pause the house hunt until next year. Like I feel very attached to this garden. I'm like, just like, and I'm no, it's like the slowness, like the just
yeah,
the tending and the pulling the leaves and checking and watering, like, to feel connected. It slows my brain down. Like I need
yeah,
things to slow my brain down because it's otherwise just constantly going in an
mm,
overwhelming sort of way.
yeah.
Um, so meditation, but not. I feel like I don't do it well, but I do it and it's fine. And don't think
There's
those.
no good at meditation. You knew I was going to say that. There's no good at meditation. But I know what you mean. I think like one of the words I loved you used is slow. Um, because I found when I moved into so we're part of, when you move into a bus, when you convert a bus, right, you join what's called the schoolie community. These are called schoolies. I'm actually not in my bus right now. I'm in my mom's friend's house, but, um, and I had learned in that community that there is this idea of like slow living, right? It's like your bus only goes 50 miles an hour, like slow driving. You get places and it's like everything takes intentionality, like you don't just go to the bathroom. It's like you have a composting toilet. So, like you have to set things up. Like cooking is not just cooking, right? Like everything kind of comes with, I have to be intentional about what I'm doing. And I found it so difficult coming out of Miami, and I thought I was going to be fine with it, but to slow down, to have to pay attention to what I was doing in order to have the results I wanted,
Mhm.
all that took a lot, and there was a lot of resistance. And then when you settle into that, the peace that comes, like we said, from the tending, right,
Mhm.
from the just breathing and observing and stepping back. And I think what you've said is what I hope people get from this podcast is that everything kind of boils down to giving yourself permission, right? That it's the permission when it comes to stepping into a new career, the permission that you don't have to struggle and be sad, that you can choose things that make you happy, right? The permission to feel joy, the permission to slow down, and the permission to accept that you might be uncomfortable, but you're going to do it anyway. It's like it's all this allowing joy and goodness.
And I think one of the things in there around permission that people struggle with, and I know I've struggled with, but I've become more comfortable with in the discomfort, is permission to let go of what's not working, even though it can be very painful,
Yeah.
like relationships or jobs or ways of thinking, ways of being, old ways of operating. But this is how I've always done it, and this is how I do it, and this is, but it's like, this isn't working. That's where the tension, right? If you would always just continue to plow through the kitchen and do the things you do, it's like your little dollhouse of a school bus home. Like you've got to literally be careful. Like you've
Yeah.
built it with your hands and you need things to be put back where they are and you don't want to break anything. It's like you have to give yourself permission to let go,
Yeah.
which is so hard. It's so hard.
It is, but it's why people like you are necessary because it's you. I also think there has to be an understanding of you don't have to be good at this and you can go to other people for this, right? Like no one is expecting us to have the answers. It's why people like Annie exist, so that you can call someone and say, I know I want to do this, but I don't know how to get there. And I think utilizing the people in your communities that do the work that you do is important. Um, because I do think sometimes we all need community. We all need help. And it's the saying it out loud and being okay with saying, I don't need to know this. I don't need to be superwoman. I need help. And so I'm going to find somebody to help me.
Oh my God.
Um,
All of that.
yeah. Annie, I love you so much. I am so grateful that you came on here and spoke to me and to the Collective Reset audience. Um, Please tell us how we can find you, where we can find you,
Mm.
and if you have an idea when your next cohort will be, or whatever
Yeah.
you'd like to share.
Um, well, let's see. So you can find, well, really quickly, I just want to speak to the one last thing that you were saying about community and not knowing, it's okay to not know how to do it all, and we can turn to each other because really nobody knows everything.
Yeah.
There's no such thing. And it's making me think of a book that I literally just finished reading, and I'm like,
Mm.
everybody needs to read it. Maybe you've read it, called How We Show Up.
I have not read that. I've heard it's incredible.
Holy shit, it is so good. Mia Birdsong is the author. How We Show Up, Reclaiming Family, Friendship, and Community. And really
Ooh.
highlighting, especially how communities of color and queer community as well, like we lean on each other
Mm.
because we can't do it alone. We don't have all the resources, we don't have all the knowledge, but we do have some. And you have some. And
Yeah.
she has some. And he has some. And like, what if we put it all together and like really how we, it's such a powerful book.
Say the name and the author again, just for anyone who might have missed it.
How We Show Up, Reclaiming Family, Friendship, and Community by Mia Birdsong.
I love it. If to our audience, if I can figure out how to link things, then I will link to that book. But otherwise, yeah.
And let's see, so my business is Mariposa Strategies, mariposastrategies.com, at Mariposa Strategies on Instagram and Facebook. I don't really do Facebook. I also have a journal that I created that's also available on Mariposa Strategies, but it's its own thing, claritypages.com, which I created to decrease overwhelm, but also move shit forward at the same time. Like it's one thing when we're trying to tend to our lives and our hearts and our healing, but we're also still trying to get our business off the ground.
Yeah.
How can I created it to hold both? Um, yeah, those are the places I'm at. I'm on Instagram most. I'm all over the stories. I love Instagram stories. And my next cohort I was thinking I would do one in August, but I think realistically it'll be September. I need just
Okay.
a little bit of space to breathe. Um, and I'm in the process right now. My business is at a growth point where I am going to bring a person or two on my team, which feels exciting. So I want to use the rest of July and August to really focus on that. And so, like, I have ideas for what will come, but I want to also really build that out with these people. So I don't know. I think 2021 will be very exciting.
That is exciting. We will all be watching and following Mariposa Strategies, mariposastrategies.com and claritypages.com. And Annie, thank you again so much. I appreciate everything that you said. And I hope that people find in you that faith that they need to take that next step, or they at least call you so that you can help them take that step. So
Thank you. Thank you for having me. I've loved catching up, and I love how we both also, like, our lives 15 years ago
yeah.
have sort of somehow, like, we've been living parallel-ish
Yeah,
experiences, even though we haven't been in touch all these years. And it's like, ah, of course, this is where we are now. I love
it's
what you're
true.
doing. Thank you for
Oh,
me.
thank you. Mwah. Big kisses to you. Love you, love you. I can't wait to see what 2021 has in store for you.
Thank you. And for you and
Oh,
your love of your life and your guys', I can't wait to see how it all unfolds.
thank you. Thank you. And to our audience, thank you for joining us. And we will see you on the next one. Bye, everybody.